content that may violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors and related card networks and banks. What up, friendos? This that I've just read to you is referred to as Rule 15, and it was recently added to the Steamworks documentation. This changes everything, not just for those games immediately impacted, not just for Steam as a platform, but for each of us. Right now, behind closed doors, the whole internet is changing, and most of it is entirely out of my hands. The content you want to play, you want to watch, you want to read, you want to use, the content people want to create and sell, this is all being controlled not by the companies that you choose to use, but by the payment processing cartel behind them. Companies like Visa, Mastercard, and PayPal have really put their foot down and said in no uncertain terms, do what we want or face complete financial ruin. The result is tens of thousands of games being pulled from multiple platforms, with more likely to follow in the coming weeks and months. So what exactly happened? On July the 16th, games suddenly started to vanish from the Steam store page, as recorded by the SteamDB website. As this happened, the now infamous Rule 15 appeared on the Steam Partner Guideline site. The rule states, content that may violate rules and standards of these third parties are no longer allowed on Steam. As a result, ever since the 16th of July, thousands of titles have either been pulled from sale on the site or will be pulled or disallowed from sale in the future. Before we get into specifics with the wording and problems with this change, it's important to note that this is not just impacting Steam. itch.io, a much smaller platform, has been hit by the same threats by the same payment processors. For them, they've removed tens of thousands of games from the platform immediately in a chaotic attempt to scramble for compliance or face the consequences of the payment processors. Both Steam and itch have made statements directly stating what has happened, and both of them have made it clear they have no choice in this matter. Steam's official response says, quote, "We were recently notified that certain games on Steam may violate the rules and standards set forth by our payment processors and their related card networks and banks. As a result, we are retiring those games from being sold on the Steam store because loss of payment methods would prevent customers from being able to purchase other titles and content on Steam. We are directly notifying developers of these games and issuing app credits should they have another game they'd like to distribute on Steam in the future." This is what has happened, and now you're going to ask yourself, why does this matter? The games being removed were mostly shovelware, slop, focusing on incest and R-word fantasies in video game format. Almost no one is going to mourn the specific removal of these games. But this is a much bigger conversation that has wider reaching implications, especially with who is involved and why they're doing this, as well as the history of other markets and countries that's happening right now. This change is coming directly from a targeted campaign from a group that calls themselves Collective Shout. Collective Shout is an Australian company who've taken it upon themselves to target Steam and other platforms because of their, quote, R-word and incest games. But what they've actually done is go much further beyond this scope and put the spotlight on a potential future that is crazy if left unchecked. Collective Shout was originally contacted by users who raised concerns about a game on Steam called No Mercy, a game that has been in headlines already, and a game that was removed by the creator on April the 10th following massive backlash. The Collective Shout organization rallied around this single game, started sending mass emails to Valve, 3,463 emails if they are to be believed, as well as gathering 70,000 signatures on a petition for the game's removal. According to Collective Shout, Valve didn't respond to their demands. After the game was then removed by the developer, Collective Shout and their followers continued to email Gabe Newell and catalog all games that they take issue with on the Steam platform, mainly those that contain what they call sexual assault and incest content. Due to Steam ignoring the emails and the petitions, Collective Shout began bombarding PayPal, Visa, and Mastercard with emails, calls, as well as publishing articles and press releases. Within around 3 weeks, payment processors folded to this public pressure and started to then dictate to these independent companies what they can or cannot have on their platform, or else. Now, obviously, or else here means we will simply refuse to process payments for your company, essentially removing their entire ability to sell a single game or make a single cent, a single penny. And this would kill the companies instantly. There are essentially no alternatives. Now, as for why you should care, this is not the first time, and it certainly will not be the last time that something like this happens. The same exact mechanisms that were just used to have these specific games removed from the internet can and have been used in the past to remove much less objectionable content. The reason the payment processors adhere to these campaigns is for their personal brand. Basically, what is currently acceptable in mainstream society? What does the current political party that we're cozying up to like? What do they dislike? What will make us the most money in the short term with our partners? It isn't a million years ago that the satanic panic surrounding fantasy settings, something as simple as fantasy settings, like that of Dungeons and Dragons, was considered objectionable to good society. It wasn't long ago that sequences in video games like the infamous Call of Duty airport level, or entire games like Grand Theft Auto, or games like Manhunt were seeing the potential of being banned. And it isn't long ago, I mean, it's even in current day, that we still have discussions around violence in video games causing violence in real life and whether it should be allowed. And we have these boomers and these politicians coming in and talking about, you know, video games are the problem. Not just that, but it wasn't long ago that certain ways of life, skin color, sexual orientation, or any number of topics wasn't represented in media or even commonly accepted in day-to-day life. It still isn't in many places. My point is that no matter what your opinion is on any individual topic, there is something you care about or enjoy that could fall into the same sights of this policy, especially when you read the wording used in Steam's statement as well as their rule. And we're calling it their rule, I guess, because it isn't their rule. It says may, content that may violate the rules and standards set forth by these organizations. Rules you didn't vote for, rules you didn't sign up for, rules you don't even get to read. We don't even know what these rules are. What happens when these payment processors discover dark fantasy, manga and anime, such as Berserk, you know, beloved, renowned titles like Berserk? The last line of the statement reads, in particular, certain types of adult content. Berserk undoubtedly falls into that category. And this isn't like some kind of boogeyman that I'm creating to like scare you or drive clicks or whatever. This is already happening in Japan. It has been for years. Visa have been waging a war against Japanese websites that sell or catalog manga and anime, specifically those who allow adult content, which, let's remember, is a very broad term. There are multiple websites like Melon Books that have had their payment processing disabled by Visa and Mastercard combined. Video game industry veterans in the Japanese market have spoken out about this for years, and even the Japanese Fair Trade Commission has been launching probes to investigate antitrust violations from these monopolistic practices. Not just that, but we, as adults, are essentially being dictated to by a credit card company what we can and cannot do. And you're going to ask, why would they do this? And I'll quote the Visa Japan CEO about this. While Visa's policy is to make legal and legitimate purchases available as much as possible, it is sometimes necessary to deny use to protect the brand. He goes on to say that these are complex decisions involving both global and local policies, and that, quote, it is important to maintain sincerity and integrity, and we will continue to do so. Make no mistake, Collective Shout was to blame for bringing this specific issue to the eyes of these companies, but this is a matter of policy for these companies across the globe whenever they see fit to protect their brand. Today, it's adult games that you might not care about. Tomorrow, it's anything with a dark fantasy adult setting. The day after, it could be horror games. It could be games with fictional violence like Grand Theft Auto. This also doesn't just apply to video games. It applies to every form of media and entertainment. This isn't a matter of a fictional slippery slope. We've seen this happen in history with the ebbs and flows of what's deemed socially acceptable in society, in certain societies. The issue isn't specifically that these certain games have been banned from platforms, or that a platform has decided to create a new rule. That would be fine if Valve came out and said, you know what, on second thoughts, we don't want these games on our platform. Fair enough, you know, a private company, they can do what they want. But this is a third party. This is an entirely unrelated business to Valve, other than the fact that they allow them to make money with the payment processing. The companies who maintain these platforms are not in control, provably. They no longer have control of what they're selling. Valve made a common sense decision in 2018 to remove themselves from the conversation and to allow adults to make their own decisions. They said, quote, Valve shouldn't be the ones deciding this. If you are a player, we shouldn't be choosing for you what content you can or can't buy. If you are a developer, we shouldn't be choosing what content you are allowed to create. These choices should be yours to make. That was 2018. It's 2025, and these are no longer our choices. These are no longer the developers' choices. This is no longer Valve's choice. Visa, Mastercard, and PayPal are choosing for us. So what now? What happens? There is, I guess, one saving grace. Obviously, in the current political and social media landscape, everyone's divided on many topics, even when it comes to media, video games, and communities surrounding them. The internet seems to be rallying around the common goal of making these companies aware of their displeasure. People are organizing mass calls and emails to these companies. The question is obviously how long is this going to last and if it's going to have any impact, which is entirely unknown. In my opinion, short of regulatory changes from governments that make these companies stop doing this, but to remove their power, say you're not allowed to tell companies we'll pull your processing if you don't stop selling these things that aren't illegal in many places and in many cases, or if somehow a new payment processing system pops up overnight that everyone can swap to that isn't just going to use their ability to act as a monopoly to stop companies doing something that they find objectionable. As of now, we truly have no idea where this will end or what will be impacted next. It's unlikely that this ends with Steam and Itch, or just with these products. As I've said, this is happening in countries across the globe, and obviously it's going to happen with more things as we go forward. There's a 0% chance as well that other products aren't caught in the crossfire. There will be games that share a tag that don't have any of these things in them that are also going to wind up banned. Really, the only thing we know for certain is that if the platform, the developer, the customer, and even in most cases the law agrees something is fine, it shouldn't be up to a credit card company to say no. And yet, that's exactly what's happening. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed. Check the links in the video description, and I'll see you next time. Stay safe. Peace.